This is Note to Self. I'm your host, Leah Tindale, and I have a question for you. Have you ever wondered, "Oh, I wish I did a career in, I don't know, science, technology, engineering, maths? Well, this is the episode for you because today we're talking all about STEM, and joining me right now is the most wonderful person that works in STEM ever, if I do say so myself. I'm talking about Jessica Lingard from the Bureau of Meteorology. Good morning, Jess.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for being a guest on the show today. And I'm so excited to chat because you are the media spokeswoman, I suppose, for the Bureau here in WA and probably sometimes Australia-wide as well. So if people are local, they may have heard your voice across some radio and even quoted in articles. First of all, to get started, have you always wanted to work in STEM? How did you end up at the meteorology? And I mean, you probably don't even classify yourself as working in STEM. You just classify yourself working as in the weather.
Look, it totally is a STEM career, but definitely not a sort of an active choice to seek out a STEM career. So initially in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was tossing up, teaching maybe. I liked the weather, but back then I was very much like a timid girl. I didn't ask a lot of questions. So I didn't really realize that although I loved the weather, I didn't realize that the weather was like a job that I could do. So I didn't really pursue that avenue. I thought, I'll just continue to enjoy my thunderstorms and watching the evening news. And I went to uni and I did teaching first up.
Wow.
So did my 4-year teaching degree. I moved up to Lancelin and I taught pre-primary kids for a year. And I very quickly realized that I had made a bit of a mistake with my career. I loved the kids and I enjoyed the work that I did, but it wasn't the passion that you need for teaching.
Yes.
Like, I think there's something very special about teachers, and I didn't have that something special. So thankfully, one of the children gave me glandular fever, and I got very, very sick right at the end of the year. And that sort of transpired into chronic fatigue. And so it got to the point where I couldn't work.
Wow.
And as I was getting better, the doctor was suggesting that I start to do more things with my day. And he was like, you could study or get a part-time job. And I sort of went, maybe this is the universe giving me my second chance to chase this other dream that I've had. I've just spent the last however many months watching every weather documentary that I could on TV while I lounged around in bed. And so, I was with a little bit of life experience under my belt. I was a bit bigger, a bit more grown up. I asked some questions and I called up the Bureau and I said, hey, I want to work for you. How do I work for you? And I got myself an amazing mentor at the Bureau, and he talked me through what I needed to do, what I needed to study. And I went back to uni. I did a science degree at UWA. And once you've got your science degree, it could be any of the sciences, but one of the big things you need is the maths and physics background, because the atmosphere runs on mathematical equations. So having that background is really advantageous. And then the Bureau every year, they run a year-long graduate meteorology course. So basically the Bureau is a tertiary provider. I've gone they give you a diploma of meteorology, which is recognized worldwide. So I could go and be a meteorologist in the UK or in the US or wherever I would like to take myself. So I managed to join that. I did a bit of work experience at the Bureau while I was at uni. And what I really wanted to do when I joined the Bureau was severe weather. Like, that was the thing that excited me. Watching the Twister movie, that 1996 movie with Helen Hunt, like that was my jam. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be out in the field. I wanted to be watching the weather. I wanted to be forecasting tornadoes and cyclones and thunderstorms and all the exciting bits. And then, I got here and I sort of realized that definitely the one thing I didn't want to do was media. Like I knew that was not for me. I hated doing radio interviews. My first radio interview is seared into my brain because I said something stupid on air. And but yeah, look, fast forward a decade, and I don't forecast thunderstorms and tornadoes and tropical cyclones. What I do is media. So definitely not where I saw my career going, but it's 100% where it needed to go because I love my job.
It's so great. And I love that as well, because you actually are one of my most favorite people to talk to from the Bureau, because you have an incredible way of distilling complex meteorological weather pattern events into some very funny, I might say, sometimes, and unusual ways, different descriptors. We might touch on that a little bit later. We can give people some of your favorite takes.
Yes.
I did want to talk on the industry as a whole, I suppose, in meteorology and more broadly in STEM. It hasn't always been fields that a lot of women end up in. Was that the case for you working in meteorology when you first came to the Bureau? Was it more of a male demographic there, and how's it changed over your sort of 10 years that you've been there so far?
Yeah, look, definitely. When I first joined the Bureau, I was doing, as I mentioned, I did some work experience, but they also offered me a job while I was waiting to get onto the Met course, because the Met course is incredibly competitive. There are hundreds of people who apply for this Met course every year. I joined the 2016 Met course, and my year was a big course. We had 16 of us. So you can see that, these several hundreds of people, there's a lot of people who don't make it every year.
Wow.
So it did take me 3 years to get onto the Met course. So that would be maybe a bit of advice. If you do want to do meteorology, don't get disheartened the first time you get knocked back, because it is so competitive. Keep trying if that's what you want to do. But yeah, so while I was working for the Bureau, waiting to get onto the Met course, I was answering the public phones. So you used to be able to just ring in and talk to somebody, and that person was me in Perth for a while. And yeah, quite often I would rock up for work and I would be the only girl in the forecasting centre. All of the managers were men, and a lot of the forecasters around me were men as well. And that has slowly changed. And I don't know whether it's that there's more women coming through or what, but there definitely seems like it's completely flipped, at least in the forecasting centre itself. So the people who do the day-to-day Perth, WA weather, it's very female dominated now. In fact, there'd be days when there would be no men, in our little section of the office. I mean, they're definitely around, and there's lots of men. We have specialist teams. So we've got like the specialist cyclone team and the specialist thunderstorm team. And so there are definitely a lot of men in those teams, but, at least for where I sit, there's a lot of great women around me.
Yeah, which is fantastic, because I think it's what's that is saying, you can't do what you can't see, or if it's not often presented to you, then you don't even know if it's an option. And for me growing up, I wouldn't even ever consider anything science, tech, smart, books, brain numbers. No, like my brain just isn't that way inclined. But it's interesting as well, because often for girls and boys in primary school, their grades are often very similar. And then it's in high school we start to see the pivot of change, maybe because I think there's obviously just picking different subjects. And then going into university, women aren't choosing STEM topics. Do you see there, why that might be from your sort of background and the conversations you have? And I suppose, and you're a parent as well, what sort of your conversations with your kids? Are you just all in for the maths and the science? Is that just how your brain thinks now? Is it a personality thing?
I mean, it definitely is. And I was having a chat to one of our latest graduates off last year's Met course to sort of see what the new kids think. I've been around for a while. It's been a while since I was at uni, but, just trying to get an idea of whether she had a slightly different experience. I mean, definitely when I was at uni, my maths and physics classes were very male dominant. And it seems to be that is still the case. There's a lot of push for those sort of mechanical jobs, and those sort of sciencey STEM-based jobs are definitely more male leaning. But I think if you've got that passion, those are the girls girls who go, you know what, buck the trend, and we're just going to
Yes.
do it anyway because that's what we love. And I think, you said it beautifully. And I know Michael quoted it in one of your previous episodes, that you can't be what you can't see. And I think the more we have these amazing women doing these amazing things and opening up these doors, like I said, I didn't even realize that meteorology was a job that I could do.
Yes.
And I think the more we make these opportunities known, the more we're going to attract people into our careers. And I do have kids. I've got a 6-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. And my family's probably not a typically traditional family. I do the bulk of the work in our house. I'm the full-time worker. My husband does an awful lot of the domestic duties. When I finished my maternity leave with my second child, I went back to work full-time, and he was a stay-at-home dad for a year. So, really flipping that narrative. He did an amazing job. He was such a good dad. And it's, we're just trying to teach them that just because you're a girl doesn't mean you have to stay home and do the dishes and clean the house. And just because you're a boy, you have to, keep your emotions inside and do all that. So we don't have girl jobs and boy jobs or anything like that, except for mowing the lawn. That's a boy job. But, everything else is, we all pitch in and we all help out because we all live here. And, my advice to my kids is, nerd out over what you love. If you love trucks and diggers like my 4-year-old does, well, then yes, buddy, you can drive a bin truck when you're older. If that's what you want to do, let's make that happen for you. And if you want to, be one of those mermaids that swims in the tanks, then let's get you some swimming lessons and let's go do that because that's what you want to do. So whatever they want to do, I will push them, and help them achieve those goals.
Maybe you can be my mum, Jess, because I would really like to be a mermaid that swims in one of the tanks, so if I can have your support. The other thing that in my sort of looking into this topic and into women in STEM, a lot of the barriers that sometimes come into play in research more fields is that there can be discrimination in the sense of you shouldn't be here, you don't belong here, and a kind of a hostility some women has reported when they do enter some of the fields. I know it has changed and it is changing and it will constantly change, and obviously depends as well on what kind of area you're in. Has that ever been something that you've tackled or you've had to go through? Or if not, I suppose, what would be your lens to approach sort of those situations?
Yeah, really interesting. I think that's probably, definitely some people's experience in these male-dominated fields. But I think there's something really cool about weather nerds, that we've all got something that we just love to connect over and enjoy together. And there really doesn't sort of feel like that I need to prove myself because I am a woman. Obviously as women, we tend to have sort of other barriers, like taking maternity leave and that sort of thing that eat into our career progression. But I have the most amazing manager. She's a woman, obviously, and she has really pioneered some amazing changes at the Bureau during her career. And a lot of the things that I get to do now as part of my daily job are as a result of the changes that she has championed before me. And I really hope that I can be that same person for, the generation coming up behind me. And I think, there's, as long as you've got sort of somebody amazing to look up to, someone who can sort of tuck you under their wing and take you along for the ride and show you that, there is no difference between a girl meteorologist and a boy meteorologist. We're all the same. That, the world is your oyster, 100%.
I mean, my next question was going to be, what would be your sort of inspiration or advice for anyone who's wanting to get into this industry? But you've already covered it quite nicely there. Is there anything else, though, if you, I suppose that's meteorology specifically, but if you're thinking more broadly, if people are sort of considering, a career in STEM, what sort of a nice, big, juicy caveat of encouragement?
So I got the most out of my career because I managed to get myself a mentor. So I put on my big girl pants and I made the scary phone calls and, I hooked up with some amazing contacts here at the Bureau, and they really helped me to sort of curate what I wanted out of my career. So,
Mm.
helped me along the path, helping me choose, the topics that I needed to study, or, where I need help, growth, or development or anything like that. So
Mm.
that would be one of my big, suggestions would be, if you've got something that you are truly passionate about, whatever that looks like, make the scary phone calls, find those contacts, and really lean into them. I think there's something great about loving what you do, is that
Mm.
you don't want to squash down the people who are coming up behind you. You want to lift them up with you. So, finding those right people to be your mentor and to bring you along for the ride, I think, is just the most amazing way to sort of progress and enhance your
Yeah.
career in whatever that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm doing this myself at the moment. I'm finally being a very brave individual. I don't like confrontation, and there's this sort of ethos I think that it surrounds people in media sometimes, or that work in creative fields, where you think, I will wait to be seen rather than I will put my hand out, or I'll try and like you did, make some phone calls, or do some emails or whatever, because we just don't want to rock the boat. We just want to make sure we're not like the trains of the command, or don't want to annoy anyone. But recently I have been on a mission to shake the trees, as I've been calling it, and to
Good.
see what falls out. And you say that so simply, like, yeah, just you made some phone calls to the bureau, but that's scary, Jess. I feel
It was
like
scary. It was scary. I'm not gonna lie. I put that off for
yeah,
a
good.
really long time, but
Thank you.
you know, my parents as well were really big on, I was in my mid-20s and I was sleeping a lot because I was so unwell, and they were really
Yeah,
keen to just kickstart that
come
motor
on.
again. And they were like, if you don't make these phone calls. So,
Great.
I mean, there was a little bit of pressure behind me, but
Yeah.
yeah, look, it's scary being out in the grown up world. But if you're grown up enough to have a job and have a career, then you're grown up enough to shake the tree and make the phone calls, and
Oh.
be the tall poppy. I think there's something in the Australian culture that we don't like tall poppies, but there's a way to be a tall poppy without being a cocky poppy as well.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. There's a lot of good phrases in there. Don't be the cocky poppy, be the tall poppy. That's a good tongue twister for people as well, I think. And I think that's so true. And we don't do that very well in Australia, which is why I think so many people don't actually end up where they would like to be,
Mm,
because we just sit waiting and hoping for doors to open. Now,
yeah.
the other thing that's very interesting about the work
Mhm.
that you do and the work in as a meteorologist is that people like to think that they know more than you, Jess. Um, you can go wherever people go. We're talking about the weather. People love to talk about the weather, and then they'll always rag on that the bureau got it wrong. They don't know what they're doing. They said it was going to rain, and it didn't rain, or it wasn't. Whatever it may be. How do you deal with everyone's entitlement and self-professed expertise?
Look, I mean, it's definitely a tricky road for us as meteorologists, but I think, you know, I'll be honest with you. The forecasts aren't 100% correct
Yeah.
100% of the time. We would love that, but unfortunately, it's just not feasible at the moment. Everything that we do, all of the models that we use, are an approximation of the atmosphere. So it may be 2025, but we don't have an accurate computer model that will
Mm,
describe the events of the future for us in terms of the weather. So there's this sort of element of chaos theory and the butterfly effect, where a small error or a mistake now being, the temperature, we forecast it to be 20.5 degrees, but it was only 20.2 degrees, or we
yeah.
forecast 12 millimeters of rainfall and it was actually 15 millimeters of rainfall. All these small things that the computers are using to calculate into the future, tiny little errors now, which may not seem huge in the grand scheme of things. As you
Mm,
sort of go out further and further, these sort of errors just get bigger and bigger. And so
right.
we are more accurate the closer we are. So, our forecast for tomorrow is way more accurate than our forecast in
Mm,
7 days' time. But my job is to make the best decisions with the tools and resources that I have now. So if I'm forecasting the weather for tomorrow, I am going to make the best decision and the best forecast that I can using the information that the models are giving me today, using my understanding and my knowledge of how the atmosphere works, how the oceans work, to create that forecast. Now, it may not be correct, but that's not because I'm incompetent at my job.
Yes.
It's just exactly the nature of the beast. We are trying to forecast into the future. We're trying to do that, crystal ball gazing thing. And until we get to a point where we have this amazing futuristic model that can 100% tell us what the weather is going to be, we're never going to be accurate. And I tell you, nobody wants a 100% forecast, a 100% correct forecast, more than a meteorologist does. It would make our lives so much easier. But look, an error in the forecast is not due to incompetence. It is just the nature of the forecasting beast, unfortunately. But, and to your other point, there is this there's a lot of information available on the internet now, especially, that anybody can look up. There are websites that show you model output to 20 days into the future, and I think we see it a lot more now with severe weather events, tropical cyclones or really heavy rainfall or something like that. Really impactful is that you can get people taking screenshots of these model outputs, 14 days into the future, 16 days into the future, and going, oh, look at this gigantic Category 5 tropical cyclone that's going to smash into our town. And, why hasn't the Bureau said anything? And you go, well, listen, hang on a minute. That's one model in 16 days' time. Like, let's just take this with a grain of salt. We look at so many models, especially when it comes to things like tropical cyclones, that we're really trying to work out what the best strategy and the most likely outcome is. And, maybe that one model that you're looking at with that really destructive Cat 5 cyclone is the only one saying that story. And if you look at all the other models that we look at, they're all like, what cyclone? It's going to be a beautiful sunny day that day. So, there's so much more to the story than looking at just a single model. But, I love my job. We're getting better every time. We've got new supercomputers coming online. We've got, all these amazing advancements. We've got better understanding of how the atmosphere and the oceans interact. And, we've got all this amazing knowledge. We are getting better, and we have made amazing improvements over the last few decades in our forecast accuracy, and that's a trend that will continue.
Does it annoy you that technology is now putting too much power in the hands of the punter? They should maybe not know as much.
I mean, it would certainly be nice, because then they couldn't question me. But I really do think knowledge is power. And as I said, the Bureau's never going to be 100% correct 100% of the time. And I'm okay with you looking at different sources for your weather forecast. Listen to me in the mornings on the radio, have a look at the different apps on your phone, but know what you're looking at. So many of the third-party weather apps that we use are a single model output with no human intervention, whereas at least the Bureau's output is multiple models plus, the human sort of sanity checking those models, is hopefully going to give us a better idea. But look at them all, make a decision. If they all tell you the same story, then cool. We've got a really good high confidence that this is what's going to happen. It is what it is, I think.
Have you ever had, or does the Bureau, I suppose more broadly, are you aware of, have a lot of like bullying and things like that comes that way, or negativity? Have you noticed or experienced?
I mean, look, definitely. I think if there's any job in the world outside of politics that gets ragged on more, I think it's the weather. The number of times you see online going, oh, I wish I could get my job wrong as often as these clowns and still keep my job. It's hard, but, as I said, earlier, we make the best decisions that we can
Yeah.
with the knowledge and resources that we have available to us right now. And that's the best we can do. We are always learning. All these big events that happen, we've always got this review process that goes on after the fact. We have a look at the models. Could we have done anything differently? And usually the answer is no. We made those best decisions that we could with the information that we had at the time. And, we will continue to do that into the future and hopefully learn something from past events that might give us a bit more of that sort of pattern recognition of, I remember something similar happened, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and this is how it played out. And, you can sort of take that with you into sort of future events.
I think that's probably a very helpful tool to have up your sleeve, because then it's not personal either. If someone's being like, or even if they are using your name because your name is associated now, unfortunately, with the things that is out there, at least there's that wall of impartiality that you get to have. Well, I'm speaking for you now. Do you have that there that you're like, well, these are the facts?
Yeah, no, definitely I do. And I think you're right. I am one of the faces and the voices of the Bureau. There's a lot of people who sit, quietly behind the scenes who, make a lot of those decisions, and they don't have their name attached to it. But my name is attached to it. But I like to hope that I like to think that I have a really good relationship with the media, especially here in WA. I spend a lot of time chatting on the radio. I've done it for 3-4 years now. I think that my personality and, my bluntness and forwardness on the radio and in these news articles, that maybe people understand that, I am actually just a human, and, we do make mistakes, and things aren't correct 100% of the time, but hopefully they go, oh, actually she's really nice. I won't rag on her too much.
I won't bully her. Yeah, that would be nice. Well, you'll never find me bullying you, Jess, so don't worry. I'll always defend you, and I love chatting to you for work on the radio, so it's always a delight. And we mentioned earlier some of the wonderful things that you say as part of your way of describing things, and my personal favourite for the last few weeks is when you talk about rain coming out of a cloud, and that if only the bravest of raindrops will make it to the ground. And it just always feels like it should be some sort of Pixar film, the story of a raindrop. But do you have another
little
favorite?
Cape and a sword and
yes. Exactly. What are your other favorite sayings that you sort of like throwing in? Do you have anything that comes to mind that you've used?
Yeah, definitely. So I like to, I think, or maybe it's a bit of my education background, is that I like to take people along on the journey with us. If I can teach you a little bit about how complex the weather is and how it works, or maybe you've got a better understanding of, the situations that we find ourselves in, and why the forecast may not work out. The brave raindrops one is what we see when we've got clouds really high above the ground, and there's a lot of dry air underneath those. So although the clouds are raining, a lot of those raindrops are actually evaporating. So it is only the bravest of raindrops that manage to make it all the way to the ground. And, how many brave soldiers are there going to be that make it all the way down? It could be 2 millimeters, it could be 15 millimeters, but, that's definitely one of my favorites. And cloud doonas is another good one, especially this time of year. Overnight, cloud acts like a blanket to keep us warm. So on the cloudy nights, it's like sleeping with our doona on, and we stay nice and warm. But when we've got these clear sky nights, it's like sleeping without our doona on, and the temperatures get really, really chilly, and we start to see fog and frost and stuff like that. So little cloud doona is what we want overnight in winter to keep us warm.
I should say as well, for anyone who's listening that's not local to Australia, a doona is a duvet or cover.
Like a blanket or a duvet.
I only realised that not everyone uses doona, and it would be a really weird word if you've never come across it before. So it's a good little caveat. Well, I suppose what is next then for your career as you progress in this wonderful, as a meteorologist and as a woman in STEM? Where do you go and where can you go? Or will you just be talking to me on radio forever?
Look, a little bit of both.
Okay.
There's always room for a bit of career growth, I think. And I think especially in the world of media, there's so much more that we could be doing, more videos and more
Mm,
social media exploration, getting more updates out to communities, posting more on Facebook, on Instagram, on Blue Sky, whatever the next big social media platform is, being able to do a bit more of that, hopefully here in WA. At the moment, a lot of
mm.
that is done out of Melbourne, but I'm hoping to, champion some change for WA, get some
Yay.
local voices and some local faces, mine,
Yes.
hopefully,
I love it.
um,
Champion.
onto our screens more often,
Right.
and
Yeah.
spread, especially when it comes to severe weather, just spreading
Mm.
those sort of risks and expectations for the forecast. But at the same time, I love my job so much, and I'm very possessive of my radio
Yeah.
interviews. And so I would like to do all of that, but then also keep all of
Of
my radio
course.
interviews, because I don't want them my babies, and I don't want to give
Yeah.
them up to anybody else.
You can just work an 80-hour week, right? That'll be
It'll
fine.
be fine. I mean, I'm just showing the kids that I can be a girl boss. It's fine.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. So supportive. So good. Now, the other thing I think that was very interesting and a little bit off topic, but you mentioned obviously that you loved the big severe thunderstorms and the weather events and the tornado movie. How's that panned out for you this year? You feel like you're getting your fix, or do you, I don't know, because it's a weird thing. You don't want catastrophic events to, ruin homes and lives, but reporting on them would probably be fascinating.
Yeah, look, it's definitely interesting. We've had a really interesting tropical cyclone season this, last season, which finished up at the end of April. Very WA heavy in terms of the
Mm,
number of tropical cyclones that we saw and where they all formed. And there is definitely that element of professional excitement that you see about seeing these features unfold and reporting about them. But I think you can be professionally excited by something while still having empathy
yes.
for the people who are going to have to experience it. I mean, I've never lived through a tornado. I've never lived through a tropical cyclone. So I can't possibly put myself in your shoes, but I can be empathetic to your
Yeah.
situation and the fear and the concern and the anxiety that you may have around those features. And I hope that I am that voice of calm and reason and forecast that will help you through those situations.
Mm.
The last few weeks have been a little quiet, and don't tend to
Yes.
use the Q word when we talk about forecasting, because it can backfire on us spectacularly. But it's nice to see winter features starting to roll through. And if you're local to WA, especially in southwest WA, last year Bunbury got targeted by these winter storms, and
Mm.
really hoping that we don't see anything like that this year, but knowing that there is always going to be severe weather. And as the world around us continues to change and warm, more of these severe events are likely. So it's that balancing act of
Yeah.
being professionally interested in something, but also being personally empathetic and
Yeah.
caring as well.
A fun fact for you, Jess. When I think I was only maybe 3 or 4 months old, I lived through my first cyclone, and my father decided it would be the perfect time to drive I think it was from Townsville to Rockhampton during that time. And my mother tells the story one way of, that we shouldn't have done that, and my dad tells the story of it was fine. So I don't know what your professional meteorology advice would have been for that, but that was my
Look, I'm
lived
with your mum
experience.
there.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
stay put. The
Don't
car is
drive.
really not where you want to be in so many situations. I think about
Yes.
lightning and maybe hailstones is probably about the only time, but for everything else, floodwaters, cyclones, tornadoes,
Yes.
strong winds, you want to be somewhere a little bit more secure.
Actually, speaking of lightning, if I'm under in a car and lightning, that's fine then.
Yes.
Ah,
Yeah. Just don't
okay.
touch the metal bits, because you've got the rubber tires which
Yes.
will ground the car. So, the car is
Ah,
probably one of the safer places that you can be. I mean, you definitely don't want to be underneath a tree or,
tree.
standing in the middle of a field holding a golf stick or anything like that. But, yeah, if you've got a car nearby, that's the place you want to
Yeah,
take
great.
shelter.
Don't become a lightning rod is basically
Please,
the
yes,
idea.
ideally.
Yes. Oh, there's so many great tips and notes to self. I need to remember that. Don't go to a field. I can do that. But I do want to ask you a big note to self. Obviously, we've had so many already. Like, definitely get into a STEM field. Definitely go and pick up the phone, write that email, even if it is scary, because that's what being a wonderful woman in STEM is all about. But are there any other final notes to self that you can leave with us today?
Look, there's one that's sort of very adjacent to what we've been talking about, and it's a bit of a running joke in the office that meteorologists are the worst for being caught out by the weather. You know, if there's a passing shower, we're going to be out on the street running out to get lunch and being caught in it. Like, if there's showers, I've got my washing on the line. You can 100% guarantee that I've been lazy early in the day when it was sunny and gone, I'll get that in later, and then it starts raining and I've gone, all right, well, that's sitting there for the next 5 days until it dries out again. But,
that's so good.
You know, I spend so much of my day looking at the weather for the state, the weather for the country, you know, for other towns and places that I so rarely check back in with where I am. And, you know, checking the radar to make sure that when I go out and get my lunch from down the road, that it's not going to rain on me. But I think maybe we can add that and translate that more into life. And don't be so set on making plans and stressing about the future and looking so far beyond that you don't realize what's right in front of you. And, you know, living in the moment and enjoying what you have around you and being appreciative of what you have around you is so important. I mean, you know, forecasting into the future is good too, but you've got to nowcast as well.
Yeah. Wow, I love it. I sort of mic drop, out she goes. It's time to nowcast. I don't need more caveats than that. I'm going to put that on a post-it note for sure. Nowcast. And you'll only know what we're talking about if you've listened to this podcast, so it's even more special. And I suppose the other good note to self would be if people have been listening and actually want to maybe investigate the path of going into meteorology themselves, does the Bureau have a great link or a place where you can sort of search through careers and the process?
Yes, absolutely. So the Bureau's website, bom.gov.au, we do have a career section. There's lots of information about the graduate meteorology course on there. It is only open once a year. I think it is currently open now. So, you know, if you do have that maths and physics background, you do have that love of meteorology and the weather, then maybe that's the place for you. If you're not there yet and you want to be, I mentioned you need to have a science degree from any university. It doesn't have to be a weather degree. There aren't many universities around Australia that offer, you know, a meteorology degree or an atmospheric science degree specifically, but any sort of science, as long as you've got that maths and that physics and that love of the weather and communicating. That's a huge part of our job. Is, you know, it's one thing to forecast the weather, but it's a completely different thing to be able to communicate that forecast to the people around Australia. So lots of information on the website, and you know, you're welcome to reach out to me as well. You know, I'm happy to advise and to support and to mentor.
Amazing.
You know, if this is where you want to go.
Now, I know you've got a specific Weather Jess socials that people will probably send you a direct message. Would you like to share that with the wonderful listeners?
Yes, please. So if you'd like to follow me, I am on Instagram at Jessica_Lingard_. I generally just post lots of cool fun facts from around the world, and obviously a little bit from what's happening here in Australia as well. But yeah, one of my favorite things that I have a lot of farmers who follow me on Instagram, and my favorite thing is when it rains, I get this flurry of messages into my inbox of, you know, Pete in Narrabeen who's got 8 millimeters of rainfall.
So good.
And I love that, you know, just seeing the impact of our forecasts and how happy it can make people is amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll put your social page and the Bureau's website for the careers link in the show notes as well. So check that out if you want to. And if you're into the world of tornadoes, if your favorite movie is tornadoes, maybe go and become a meteorologist. Pursue something in STEM. It's definitely worthwhile. Don't let yourself be hindered. But Jess Lingard from the Bureau of Meteorology, always an absolute delight. And thank you so much for giving me so much of your time and your insights on Note to Self.
Oh, Leah, thank you so much for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure.